In 2026, AI can write your strategy, manage your data, and optimize your business. But it cannot inspire a human being. It cannot build trust in a crisis. As technology speeds up, the most valuable skill isn't technical, it's psychological. There is one specific skill that separates the leaders who thrive from those who get replaced by algorithms. Today, I'll show you the #1 psychological skill you must master to lead any team, beyond AI and strategy. The 2026 shift: why strategy is now a commodity and empathy is the new gold. Strategy has become a commodity. The real differentiator is how leaders mobilize people through uncertainty. The pace of change is relentless, and information is everywhere. What's scarce is the capacity to turn that information into coherent action without drilling into teams' morale. The single psychological skill that matters most is strategic empathy, a disciplined practice of listening, understanding, and guiding with the human at the center. It isn't soft stuff. It's a clear, measurable edge that compounds as teams feel seen, safe, and aligned. The human compass points toward decisions that fit both the data in the room and the realities of the people who carry the work. The anchor in the storm holds steady when plans falter or voices clash. The signal versus noise becomes a daily discipline. Tune into the signal, the real concerns, motivations, and constraints, while letting the noise fall away. In this moment, strategy loses some of its sparkle because it's broadly accessible. The real skill is translating strategy into coordinated human effort. Empathy serves as the engine for that translation. Psychological safety, the sense that risk-free candor is welcome rather than punished, turns debates into discovery, and discovery into improvement. When teams feel they won't be judged for honest input, they surface problems earlier, test ideas faster, and course-correct before small errors become big failures. Leaders who practice strategic empathy create environments where learning is explicit, mistakes are examined without blame, and people can bring their whole selves to the work. This builds trust, and trust is the most scalable form of leverage a leader has. Practically, strategic empathy requires concrete daily rhythms. Start by listening with intent. Ask what's really happening on the front lines, not what the PowerPoint says. Create safe spaces for dissent, where concerns can be voiced without fear of retribution. Reframe failure as information, not as a verdict on capability. When making decisions, surface diverse perspectives early and synthesize them into a course of action that respects both speed and humanity. Communicate with clarity about what you know, what you don't, and what you're doing to learn more. Then anchor choices in shared purpose and clear guardrails so teams can act with autonomy while staying aligned. The goal is to convert empathy from a mood into a method that guides tactics as reliably as metrics guide budgets. Consider a product team navigating a volatile market. Instead of pushing a roadmap once and waiting for results, a leader invites frontline insights, tests assumptions with small experiments, and adjusts quickly based on real user feedback. A support organization, facing burnout, reallocates resources after listening sessions reveal hidden loads and friction points, demonstrating care that translates into sustained performance rather than brief morale boosts. In another case, a cross-functional project uses structured debriefs after launches to capture what went right and what didn't, then updates processes so future work flows more smoothly. These are not acts of kindness alone. They're deliberate investments in a resilient organism that can adapt when the environment shifts. Ultimately, strategic empathy reframes leadership as a social technology. By cultivating psychological safety, leaders unlock rapid learning, sharper decision-making, and deeper commitment. The power to influence outcomes no longer rests solely on clever frameworks. It rests on the people who execute them, united by a shared sense of purpose and a trusted space to speak honestly. The 2026 shift makes one truth undeniable: being human is your greatest power. When strategy becomes a routine, empathy becomes the driver that makes that routine intelligent, responsive, and enduring. The core skill: strategic empathy. Understanding the why behind people's actions. Understanding the deeper why behind people's actions sits at the core of how modern leaders guide teams through ambiguity. Strategic empathy isn't a soft skill, it's a navigational system. It acts as the human compass, pointing toward decisions that fit real human needs rather than surface preferences. People respond to incentives, fears, and values that often stay hidden beneath the surface. When you tune your awareness to those signals, you reveal patterns others miss. The anchor in the storm is a leader who questions assumptions, validates feelings, and translates motive into action that keeps the team moving in a shared direction. This is how strategy becomes humane and effective at the same time. Strategic empathy is not about being nice for its own sake. It turns raw data into human context. When you understand the why, you can anticipate resistance, align competing priorities, and reduce unnecessary friction. A team that feels seen is more willing to voice concerns, test bold ideas, and correct course quickly. Psychological safety grows when leaders model curiosity, invite difficult conversations, and respond with clarity rather than blame. In practice, this means noticing and naming emotions that drive behavior, giving people room to speak up, and backing words with consistent, concrete actions. The signal versus noise distinction becomes real. You listen for the authentic motivators and separate them from loud but unhelpful chatter. That clarity fuels faster, better decisions. The practical payoff is a competitive edge. When concerns are surfaced early, you catch misalignments before they fester. When people feel safe, cross-functional teams collaborate rather than collide. When leaders translate feelings into shared intent, execution accelerates because everyone understands the underlying reasons for choices. This is where strategic empathy shows its true weight. It aligns what people want with what the business needs, turning individual motives into collective momentum. The more you cultivate depth in conversations, the more you shrink both silos and guesswork. The result is an organization that acts with precision in uncertain times, not because it follows a rigid plan, but because it understands people deeply. Here are practical ways to cultivate it, starting today. Begin with a simple daily question that probes motive instead of progress alone. What would make this task meaningful for you this week? Create a routine of short, safe check-ins where people can name blockers without fear of punishment. Build a motivation map for your team that links individual drivers, autonomy, mastery, belonging, with project goals, so decisions reflect human needs as well as numbers. Practice blameless reviews after setbacks, focusing on learning rather than fault. Model vulnerability by admitting what you don't know and inviting input. Embrace deliberate listening. Repeat back what you heard, verify accuracy, and adjust plans accordingly. This practice turns empathy into a repeatable process that strengthens trust, speeds alignment, and toggles the organization from reactive to proactive. The anchor in the storm becomes not only a stylistic trait but a reliable framework that keeps people aligned when the weather of business gets rough. Being human, in this sense, is not a softness to be endured but a capability to be sharpened. The AI gap: what machines can't replicate: human intuition and emotional resonance. Machines excel at pattern recognition, speed, and the steady processing of vast data. They stumble when the moment calls for the nuance of a human inner map, the subtle read of a room, the drift of unspoken concern, the way a single sentence changes a team's willingness to take a risk. The AI gap isn't about math versus feeling. It's about the edge you gain when you bring a living, breathing mind to complex human dynamics. The human compass points toward intuition built from experience, values, and a practiced sense of what matters in the moment. The anchor in the storm holds steady when signals grow faint and options expand into fog, reminding you that leadership is not only about what you know but how you orient people toward meaning. In practice, intuition matters most when data collide with emotion and context. A crisis may demand rapid action, yet the team's morale and cohesion shape which actions will stick. An AI model can outline possible courses, but it cannot feel the room or weigh the ethical stakes the way a person does. A leader senses hesitation in a junior colleague's voice and chooses to pause, ask a question, and reframe the next move so that the room feels safe to contribute. That sensitivity, not speed alone, stitches a plan into something durable. It's where strategic empathy proves its heft, turning information into shared resolve rather than a set of numbers that never touch hearts. Strategic empathy is not simply being kind. It is a competitive advantage grounded in how teams perform under pressure. When a leader reads what's unsaid, an undercurrent of doubt, a spark of enthusiasm, a border of resistance, and responds with clear, resonant intent, trust accelerates. The signal versus noise dynamic becomes unmistakable. Noise fades when a leader names real concerns and aligns them to a clear purpose. In cross-functional work, this means speaking a common language that respects different perspectives while guiding them toward a cohesive arc. It means weaving individual strengths into a narrative that everyone can rally behind, not just a plan that looks good on slide decks. Deep psychological safety is the soil where human talent grows. People will take risks and admit mistakes only when they believe they won't be crushed for it. A leader who routinely invites dissent, who models vulnerable candor, and who treats errors as learning opportunities creates a culture that AI cannot conjure. The anchor in the storm becomes a lived practice. You name the fear, You acknowledge the unknown, you establish norms for respectful disagreement, and you follow through with credible commitments. To cultivate this safety, establish rituals that democratize voice, short, regular check-ins where quiet team members are invited to speak, transparent postmortems that focus on processes, not people, and explicit praise when someone brings a hard truth to light. These moves turn psychological safety from a buzzword into a real capability that guides action. To strengthen the human edge, lean into practices that sharpen intuition and resonance. Practice deliberate listening. Quiet the inner chatter, reflect after conversations, and write down the subtle cues you picked up. Seek diverse experiences that broaden your relational repertoire. Different teams, different roles, different ways of seeing the world. Build patterns by connecting dots from disparate domains, then test them in small experiments with honest feedback. Use technology to surface data and highlight gaps, but let your judgment weave the data into a human-centered interpretation. Storytelling becomes a tool for alignment. It translates complex intention into shared meaning. In the end, being human isn't a soft add-on. It's the core capacity that turns information into trust, uncertainty into direction, and plans into momentum. Your deepest power lies in the ability to feel, connect, and lead with a presence that machines cannot replicate. Technique 1. Active presence. How to make people feel heard in a world of digital distractions. In a world flooded with screens, leader attention has become the scarce resource. Active presence means more than being physically there. It's the cognitive and emotional commitment to the person in front of you. The human compass points toward the other person's experience, not just toward the agenda. The anchor in the storm holds steady even when messages pile up and tempo quickens. The signal versus noise distinction helps leaders separate what truly matters from a constant drip of updates and chatter. Presence is not a mood. It's a practice stance that changes what people feel when they speak and what they believe they can risk sharing. First, you set up the conditions for real listening. Remove distractions and give the other person your full attention. Silence your notifications, close irrelevant tabs, and create a private space when possible. Your body language matters as much as your words. Face the speaker, lean slightly forward, and make eye contact that is steady but natural. A calm tone, intentional pauses, and a minimal cadence of interruptions signal that you're inviting their full input rather than delivering a monologue. Paraphrase what you heard and name the emotion you notice, so the speaker feels seen rather than analyzed. That small alignment creates psychological safety powerful enough to unlock candid truth-telling. Active presence also means shaping the conversation around the other person's needs, not just your own agenda. Start with a genuine check-in about how they're experiencing the work and the team. Invite them to share the hardest parts first, and resist rushing to conclusions or quick fixes. When you summarize what you heard, do it with specificity. What I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z, and your main concern is A. Then translate that into concrete next steps the person can own, while you commit to removing roadblocks on your side. In practice, this builds trust that is not loud or flashy but durable, the kind of trust that sustains collaboration through ambiguity. Strategic empathy shows up as a turn-by-turn roadmap for action, not a polite smile after a tough moment. Digital contexts demand a disciplined form of presence as well. In asynchronous work, respond with purpose rather than speed. A thoughtful note that captures key points helps the recipient feel heard even when you're not in the same room. During video calls, name moments of alignment and moments of uncertainty aloud, so the group can navigate together. Guard against the urge to multitask. A single focus on the speaker creates a different energy in the room, a kind of quiet gravity that others feel and imitate. Even brief, precise feedback can turn a single conversation into a turning point for performance and morale. The intent is to convert attention into a psychological safety net that teammates instinctively rely on. Strategic empathy is not merely niceness. It is a competitive advantage that compounds over time. When people feel heard, they take more calculated risks, test new ideas, and own their work more fully. The human compass points you toward humane decisions that still advance the business, because teams move faster when fear is lower and clarity is higher. Presence filters out the noise that slows progress and clarifies what truly matters, acting like an anchor that holds the team steady amid shifting priorities. Leaders who cultivate this skill become the kind of presence that others seek out when turbulence hits, not because they demand compliance, but because they inspire voluntary alignment. That is how you turn being human into a strategic asset. To embed active presence as a daily practice, adopt a simple ritual. In every meeting, begin with a 1-minute check-in about workload, energy, and blockers. End with a clear recap and a shared sense of next steps, plus one accountable owner. In one-on-one conversations, schedule a predictable cadence and protect it as a sacred space for candor. In digital channels, set response expectations that honor thoughtful communication over rapid-fire reaction. Measure impact not with slogans but with stories. A team member says they felt truly heard. A risky idea is explored rather than shut down. A plan is refined because someone spoke up. The goal is deep psychological safety that makes people want to contribute rather than merely comply. The essence of active presence reveals a truth. Being human is the greatest power a leader has. When you show up with attention, you become the anchor others rely on to weather uncertainty. You become the signal that rises above noise, clarifying meaning and direction. And you become a catalyst for strategic empathy that turns ordinary teams into high-performing units. In practice, that means choosing presence over speed when it matters, choosing perspective over pride when it's risky, and choosing humanity over inertia when the team needs a compass. The result isn't softness, it's sharper judgment, faster alignment, and a culture where people feel safe to risk bold steps. That is how presence becomes a leader's most durable advantage. Technique 2. Emotional regulation. Staying as the anchor when the team is in a panic. Emotional regulation is a core psychological skill that keeps a leader effective when a team hits turbulence. In practice, it means choosing what to say, when to breathe, and how to pace the room rather than letting impulse drive the talk. Research across organizational psychology shows that leaders who regulate their emotions help reduce team stress and improve decision quality under pressure. The anchor in the storm is not a hard shell but a practiced presence that stabilizes the room. When panic rises, voices sharpen and decisions become reactive. The leader's calm acts like a filter, quieting the noise so what matters can be heard. Technique in action begins with a simple pause. Name the emotion, not as admission of weakness, but as shared reality. Use a paced breathing pattern with equal counts for inhale, hold, exhale, and hold to steady physiology. Follow with a concise frame: what we know, what we don't know, and the plan to verify and move forward. Then offer a concrete next step and assign accountability so momentum isn't lost in the churn. Maintain a measured tempo in your voice and avoid mirroring the room's fear. Your cadence can become an invisible cue that guides others toward clarity. The goal is to turn noise into signal, not to silence emotion but to channel it toward action. Strategic empathy is not niceness, it's a competitive advantage. It acts as the human compass, interpreting both people's pressures and real-world realities so the team isn't chasing distractions. With the signal versus noise in mind, you distinguish genuine information from rumor and speak to what will actually move the project forward. In practice, when a critical outage hits, you summarize verified facts, acknowledge unknowns, and outline a risk-adjusted plan to test assumptions quickly. You invite input with targeted prompts like, what would change if this assumption proves false? And who should own the next checkpoint? This approach dampens panic-driven chatter and aligns the team around a shared course of action. Psychological safety underpins sustainable performance. Leaders who model vulnerability and invite dissent create a space where people feel safe to speak honestly without fear of repercussion. Practical rituals reinforce this: brief, honesty briefs after events, regular pulse checks that solicit early warnings, micro-teaching moments where teams practice new responses to stress. Use language that reinforces safety, such as, I may be wrong, here's what we know and what we still need to test. In this landscape, being human isn't a soft choice. It's the lever that unlocks speed, trust, and resilience. As the anchor in the storm, you stay present, you name the weather, and you guide the crew with a calm that makes action possible. Technique 3. Psychological safety. Creating an environment where people are not afraid to fail. Psychological safety is the belief that you can speak up, admit mistakes, and ask for help without fear of ridicule or punishment. When teams feel this, learning accelerates, collaboration deepens, and courage becomes a renewable resource. The human compass points toward truth rather than control, guiding every decision by what members truly think and feel. The anchor in the storm is the leader who holds steady even when the feedback is uncomfortable, turning pressure into productive inquiry. In practice, strategic empathy shows up as a real, fast-moving edge, not softness, but clarity and speed in a crowded market of competing signals. To cultivate it, begin with how you model risk-taking in everyday moments. Share a recent misstep and the concrete lesson that followed. Invite critique without defensiveness, and name your own uncertainties aloud so others feel safe naming theirs. In meetings, establish norms. Give people space to think, resist interruptions, and respond to concerns with curiosity rather than judgment. Create blameless reviews where the focus is on the system, not the scapegoat. When tough data lands, frame the discussion around problems to solve, not people to blame, and recenter conversations on what support the team needs to move forward. Practical techniques multiply when you treat feedback as fuel rather than friction. Use micro-questions that invite reflection, like what did we miss? Or what would we do differently next time? Pair feedback with explicit appreciation for what went well, so the emphasis stays balanced. Normalize dissent by rotating facilitators and giving space for quiet voices to surface in written or async channels as well as live discussions. In distributed or hybrid settings, codify psychological safety through rituals. Clear decision logs, transparent rationale for choices, and written postmortems that begin with strengths before cataloging gaps. The signal versus noise becomes easier to hear when mechanisms are in place to elevate constructive input over noise and fear. Finally, see psychological safety as a living muscle that scales with your organization. The goal is not to be nice, but to be human together in a way that compounds courage into action. Strategic empathy is not a soft add-on. It is a competitive advantage that accelerates learning, speeds adaptation, and elevates performance in uncertain times. In the end, being human is your greatest power. It unlocks creativity, fosters resilience, and turns failures into fuel for growth. Cultivate daily rituals that invite vulnerability, protect the space for experiments, and reinforce the message that every voice matters in shaping the path forward. The mirror effect: how your inner state as a leader dictates the performance of everyone around you. Leaders don't just set goals, they shape the emotional climate that surrounds them. People pick up this climate quickly through micro-signals: tone, pace, gaze, and cadence, and those signals cascade through the team. The inner state of a leader acts like a compass. It points teammates toward confidence or doubt, clarity or confusion. This is the mirror effect in action. Your inner tone, your patience, your willingness to be imperfect, translates into how safe people feel taking risks. When the room tightens with stress, a calm leader anchors the storm, and teams breathe, focus, and decide rather than spin. Strategic empathy is not just nice, it's a competitive edge. It means sensing what people need before they ask, and choosing actions that align with both business goals and human needs. When a leader names the emotion in the room and invites brave questions, people relax their guard. They switch from protective stance to collaborative problem solving. Psychological safety becomes a platform for learning, experimentation, and deliberate candor. The signal versus noise idea applies here. Clear, authentic signals cut through confusion, while mixed signals create noise and hesitation. Examples abound in everyday practice. In a crisis, a leader who acknowledges uncertainty and shares their thought process invites others to contribute. The team tests ideas with less fear of failure. In a long strategic shift, transparent updates and listening sessions keep people connected to purpose. A leader who hides doubts breeds speculation and rumor. A leader who shows curiosity builds commitment. Remote teams depend even more on consistency in communication and visible care. A weekly check-in that starts with listening rather than reporting puts the human compass at center. The anchor in the storm is presence, not perfection. Practical steps map the path forward. Cultivate inner weather discipline. Practice quick calibration of your own state before engaging others. A few moments of breathing, a quick scan of body tension, a simple question to reframe the moment can shift the whole room. Use micro-rituals. Open with a vulnerability-based statement. Invite one concrete input. Close with gratitude. Talk less about plans and more about people. Tie tasks to values. Celebrate learning as a constant. Create psychological safety by inviting contradiction without hostility, by modeling rapid apologies and rapid course corrections. This steady practice makes strategic empathy a muscle that competitors cannot imitate quickly. Ultimately, being human is your greatest power. The inner state you cultivate acts as the anchor for every interaction, decision, and outcome. When you show up as a human who is learning, attentive, and trustworthy, the team mirrors that posture. They align their energy, invest more effort, and extend themselves beyond their comfort zones. The mirror effect becomes a force multiplier, turning ordinary teams into high-performing, resilient units. Your work is not only to direct but to illuminate, to guide with clarity while remaining deeply human. That is how leadership in the 2026 era becomes less about control and more about choreography of courage, care, and capability. Practical application. One 5-minute habit to transform your leadership today. Psychological safety reliably predicts team performance. When people feel seen, heard, and safe to expose mistakes, they share feedback, test ideas, and course correct before problems escalate. That safety isn't soft, it's a hard-edged advantage. Strategic empathy, the skill of sensing and shaping the inner weather of your team, turns human chemistry into a strategic asset. Leadership becomes the human compass, guiding toward true north even when the weather turns rough. Your aim is to tune out the signal versus noise and listen for what truly matters. Here is one 5-minute habit that can change how you lead today. It is called the 5-minute human compass. Set a timer for 5 minutes at a consistent moment each day. Before stand-up or first coffee works well. Step 1. Drop distractions and give your full attention to the person you are with. Step 2. Ask a single open-ended question that invites real talk. For example, what would make your top priority easier to move forward today? Step 3. Listen for content and emotion, resisting the urge to jump in with solutions. Step 4. Reflect back what you heard in one concise sentence and name the emotion you detected. Step 5. Commit to one concrete action you will take today to remove an obstacle, and share that commitment with the person immediately. Optional. Jot a quick note afterward about what you learned and what changed. Time distribution matters. About 2 minutes listening, 1 minute paraphrasing, 2 minutes deciding and noting. This small ritual makes strategic empathy tangible. It turns listening into leadership that moves. Applied in practice, the habit scales across contexts. In one-on-one meetings, it surfaces blockers before they spill into a sprint. In stand-ups, it compresses trust into a daily signal rather than noisy chatter. With remote teams, it reduces misinterpretation when cameras are on and questions stay simple. A product sprint example. A 5-minute check-in surfaced a dependency on a colleague in a different function, prompting a quick reallocation of focus and a faster decision cycle. The act itself acts as an anchor in the storm, keeping attention on real obstacles rather than assumptions. The outcome is clearer signals over clutter, faster alignment, and a calmer, more capable team under pressure. The habit also invites deep psychological safety as a practice, not a performance metric. Avoid turning it into a checkbox or a sermon. Stay curious, concise, and concrete. Practice in low-stakes moments first, model candor, and celebrate honest feedback when it arrives. Over time, you'll notice conversations becoming more precise, requests more doable, and mistakes owned with accountability. The goal is simple: leadership that feels human, because human leadership is the strongest lever you have. Strategic empathy is not niceness. It is a competitive edge. The human power you hold in listening, naming, and acting, 5 minutes at a time, can redirect momentum, align people, and turn the day's chaos into progress. The future belongs to the empathetic leader. Master the skill now. Strategic empathy is the deliberate practice of understanding others' perspectives to guide decisions, turning what people feel into the raw material for action. The future favors the empathetic leader. It sits at the center of what I call the human compass, pointing decisions toward human impact rather than only metrics or timelines. It is not niceness. Strategic empathy is a competitive advantage because it reduces misalignment, accelerates trust, and turns diverse insights into coherent action that withstands fatigue and uncertainty. To practice it, you start with psychological safety as the ground you stand on, not a checkbox to tick. Safety is the soil. Teams feel free to speak up when leaders name uncertainty, invite debate, and respond with curiosity rather than judgment, creating a calm where risk can be surfaced and addressed before it becomes a crisis. Listen with intent. Develop emotional literacy through structured listening routines, check-ins that surface emotion, paraphrasing to confirm understanding, and naming the felt concerns without rushing to fix them. In practice, strategic empathy means balancing what people say with what they imply, tracking signals from customers, frontline staff, and hidden stakeholders who rarely get a seat at the table. The anchor in the storm. When a product team hears from a support agent about a recurring frustration, the leader reframes the roadmap, not to please one department, but to reduce real friction across the system. Action follows insight. In crisis, strategic empathy guides decisions by filtering noise, prioritizing transparent communication, and modeling vulnerability so others feel safe to speak honestly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. The signal versus noise metaphor helps leaders separate the meaningful input from distractions, ensuring time and energy are spent on issues that move the system forward. Customers are not abstract data. A leader who demonstrates this skill invents feedback loops, inviting quick checks on how decisions land, adjusting after listening, and publicly acknowledging what was learned along the way. Strategic empathy also strengthens retention and collaboration because people know they are seen, their work matters, and the path forward includes them rather than being dictated to them. Being human is power. Make it a daily practice. Start meetings with a minute of silence to notice emotional currents, schedule regular empathy interviews with teammates across functions, and close each decision with a clear accounting of who was heard and how that shaped the outcome. The future is theirs who listen first. Strategic empathy is the one psychological skill you must master in the 2026 era. It's not about being nice. It's about shaping outcomes through understanding, connection, and clarity. Direct summary of key points. You read the human signals people show and translate them into actionable decisions. Deep psychological safety is the soil that lets teams experiment, speak up, and correct course without fear. Strategic empathy is a competitive advantage, not a soft add-on. It unlocks faster learning, sharper alignment, and steadier execution. Build daily rituals that keep empathy real, listening with intent, giving honest feedback, and aligning actions with shared values. Lead by example. Model vulnerability, set clear boundaries, and make room for hard conversations without burning trust. You're here because you want to lead with intention in a world that tests your nerve. Think of your role as the human compass. You orient decisions toward people's needs and the longer arc you're aiming to move together. Think of the team as the anchor in the storm. Your steadiness gives others permission to show up, try, fail, and try again. And think of every message you send as an actual signal in the sea of noise. You filter out the loudest distractions and keep the signals that matter. In practice, this means inviting candor, naming your own uncertainties, and designing touchpoints that turn empathy into action. Not drama, not fluff, but tangible progress. It means creating space where people can voice concerns, test ideas, and learn quickly together. It means leaders who are human, not perfect, and who use that humanity to guide smarter decisions under pressure. A simple step you can take this week: schedule a 15-minute check-in with someone on your team. Ask 2 questions. What would make this project work better for you this week? What is one risk or concern you're not saying out loud yet? Then share your own honest answer and commit to a concrete next move. Small, brave steps compound. If you found this helpful, you'll likely want more. In upcoming episodes, we'll unpack a practical playbook for weaving strategic empathy into performance conversations, onboarding, and remote collaboration, without jargon or empty promises. We'll also explore how to measure psychological safety in real teams and how to keep the human edge sharp as we scale. Remember, being human is your greatest power. When you lean into it, when you use the human compass to steer, the anchor in the storm to ground, and the signal versus noise discipline to listen for what truly matters, you don't just lead people. You empower them to lead with you. See you in the next one.